With the Open qualifiers coming up on March 6th, everyone's been speculating on how many teams are going to be invited to the event and where those regional qualifier spots are going to go. Historically, Valve hasn't had a set format for these events, but I've decided to use some of my own evidence from previous majors, along with some of my own ideas to hypothesize the upcoming invite format. Now, many things are being speculated, but the one thing that is confirmed are the qualifying regions, which are now 6 instead of 4. That is North America, Europe, China, Southeast Asia, South America, and the Commonwealth of Independent States, also known as the CIS region. Now, personally, I'm excited to have more regional Dota come to the international stage, and it really gives those regions opportunities to grow and hopefully develop into more stronger competitors. Giving international practice to these teams that will typically not get it, I think is really important to help the growth of the entire Dota scene. You know, similar to Tier 2 growth with these regional qualifiers. Hopefully we see those expand in some sort of way in the near future, very similar to other formats, you know, turning them to LANs or something like that. Now, the first format I want to talk about is the 6 or 8 teams being invited. Certain regions just receive more than one qualifying spot with this format, and I find it personally a lot harder to justify, comparatively. You see, I can understand. I see the justification for South America and CIS maybe only receiving one spot, while other more prominent regions receiving 2. But I also don't see in this format 6 or 8 that any teams from those regions are going to be invited. So you're going to have one team from each of those countries representing. I find that a little difficult. Maybe South America makes more sense, but CIS, I definitely think there's at least one team that can represent. That's Virtus Pro. I'll explain that a little bit later, but I personally believe it's important that all regions receive the same amount of qualifying spots, at least for this major. This is the test. This is, you're trying out these new regions that really haven't been proven. And I think just giving every single region is fair. It's going to be easier to follow as a viewer. And the biggest thing I think is nobody can complain that, on Reddit that their region isn't being represented well enough or something like that, right? So this leaves us with 4 or 10 teams being invited. The biggest flaw I see with the 4-team format is that NA, Europe, China, grossly underrepresented if this happens. There's some fantastic teams, but with only 4 invites, you're looking at maybe EG, DC. So you get 2 from North America and then another 2, and then China would have newbie, maybe VGJ, and Europe would just be missing a lot of really top teams. You got OG as an invite, maybe Liquid, but then, now you're missing out on certain LAN winners, and I just think the whole quality of play of this event would end up being probably the worst Valve event if they end up going with this format. So I really hope they don't do it. And honestly, I can't even name 2 solid teams from South America right now. So it's really, really hard for me to justify. So for me, the sweet spot's the 10-team invite system. Every region gets 1 qualifier spot. The most fair, there's enough top teams to justify, I think, that many invites right now. There will be some finagling, and I know some people will disagree with some of my invites, but I think right now there are enough teams that you can make a justification. The question is, who do you put on that kind of final 3? The top 7, even top 8, I think, are pretty easy to make a good justification for. But the last ones, there's going to be a lot of different opinions, I think, if this is the format that is used. We saw a similar format used at the Manila Major, which did 12 invites. Now, obviously, there were only 4 qualifier spots at that time. So this format isn't actually completely unheard of. So I do imagine that we will see many of these teams. So long story short, 10 invites, 6 qualifier spots, 1 from each region. It's going to be my guess for the invite format for the Kiev Major. Now, here's my quick and dirty 10 invites. The first one, Virtus Pro, talked about it a little bit earlier. Since this is the Kiev Major, I see Valve wanting at least 2 CIS teams attending this event, and the best way to guarantee that is to invite one. Their best line performance was 3rd or 4th at ESL 1 Genting, but more importantly, I think people forget, is that they beat OG in a best of 5 to get there. That, to me, is way more valuable than their LAN performance, which was good, but not, obviously not enough to say, oh yeah, they definitely deserve the invite. Now, I don't know if Valve will be looking this far back, but I do value this a little bit more, and I think people will probably overlook this a little bit, especially a lot of people value LAN results and LAN results and LAN results. So, and I do too, and I understand that. But their DDoS in the DAC qualifier was very disappointing for me. I really hope to see them more at international events. But if they get invited, I think the Russian factor is going to be enough to really justify that for the Kiev Major. My next invite, really easy one, OG. Surprisingly enough, they haven't won a LAN since the Boston Major, but I think at the same time, nobody's doubting the skill of this team. Super consistent, always going to have a target on their back. They won the Boston Major, so in my opinion, enough said. They're definitely going to be one of the invites. Evil Geniuses. Now, they've had a great performance at Dota Pit, but they've kind of gone a little bit radio silent after the few months afterwards. They have taken a little bit of a break, I believe, but they are starting to boot camp soon. And just winning Dota Pit Season 5 against OG, lots of top international teams. Unfortunately, Newbie and Wings weren't able to make it to that event, but I think it really solidifies their Kiev invite, just winning a LAN, especially in the 10-team format. Next, Digital Chaos. They've been struggling the past month with poor results. Dota Pit, Star Ladder. I believe they were last or tied for last in both those tournaments. And some have argued that these last place finishes are actually going to jeopardize their invite. But honestly, I don't see that happening. They've won ESL 1 Genting, and they looked really strong at that event. Now, is that meta abuse, being able to figure out the game ahead of each other? But even then, you won a LAN on the new patch. To me, that is enough to get you invited to the Kiev Major. Team Liquid. Now, they're back. And I think after not qualifying for the Boston Major, they definitely wanted to make a mark on this upcoming one. And I think we saw it primarily in the DAC qualifiers and Starlighter I-League Season 3 finals. They looked very dominant. They're just looking like a team that's kind of gelled together. Initially, when GH came on board, I didn't really see that synergy, but now we are looking at a very, very, very strong team. And just winning the Starlighter I-League event secures their invite. Now, here we get to a little bit of a tougher one, Wings. Now, they're the champions of TI6, right? But I don't think they found their groove post-patch, post 7.0, kind of after the Boston Major, especially at the Boston Major where they went out at 16th. But at the same time, remember this happened at Manila before, and then now they've won it all for TI6. They were one of the favorites going to Manila, bombed out. And they're like, oh no, Wings, they're not relevant anymore. No, they're still really good. So I think they're underperforming right now, very similar to DC, but I think everybody knows they're a team not to be underestimated. And actually, just for me, winning TI helps you really get to Valve events. So they've had okay performances other than that, and I think we'll see this team hopefully show up for the event. Next is Newbie, and right now they've had a stranglehold on the Chinese region. Their only international experience was actually ESL 1 Genting. They were supposed to head to Dota Pit, but they lost there in the grand finals 3-2 to DC. I thought they looked pretty good. I think the back-to-back regional events of DPL Season 2 and the Dota 2 Ace League, they won both of those pretty handily, and I think that's going to be enough to get them invited, along with the ESL 1 Genting performance. I think that will be enough. Now, this is a definitely tough one. VGJ. I thought their performance at Starlighter I-League was phenomenal, and they in some alternate universe they probably beat Liquid, and they're the ones going to be the obvious invite here. But I think they also deserve to be invited because they were second to Newbie in Dota 2 Ace. They won the secondary league in DPL Season 2, and I know that league was a lot easier, but they looked completely dominant from the games that I was able to watch. And just seeing them more recently here at Starlighter I-League, I think that event is going to be weighted more. Mostly because if you do extremely well at a very recent event, I just think it's going to be more valuable to Valve when they look at sort of these teams and how that's going to go down. So they get an invite. I know this one's a little bit shaky, but probably not as shaky as my next one, which is going to be TNC. Now, I believe at least one Southeast Asian team deserves to be invited to this major, and TNC and Faceless are the two obvious picks. Now, who do you pick between those two? Many people have been picking Faceless, and I completely understand. They are a very strong team. They've had relatively good performances, including an okay performance at the Boston Major. Now, single elimination format, like I said, helps nobody except for one team, which will come up next. And, I think TNC is just able to squeeze through just a little bit further with their LAN win at WESG. And I know a lot of people are saying, tier 2 LAN, there's not a lot of top teams there. But, I think they still showed quite a bit of dominance at that event. They did an unexpected performance at Starlighter I-League, sorry. And I think that just puts them just ahead of Faceless for me. And So this is where we come to the toughest one though, is Ad Finum. Last but not least. Now these guys, they're the toughest one for me to justify. Their performance at the Boston Major was good, phenomenal in fact. I think they definitely overperformed, but since then I think they've been inarguably weak. You know, they've bombed out of a lot of qualifiers. They haven't done super well in the matches that they were played. Even in elimination mode, they did look a little shaky. But I think regardless of all this, the most damning evidence against them, they are going to be invited. Top 2 in Boston is enough to secure their spot in the Kiev Major. And I'll explain why, because it used to be, in my mind, oh, top 4, double elimination. If you make it to top 4, you deserve that invite. But now with the single elimination format, I think top 2 is definitely more deserving. I love these guys. I hope to see more of these guys, and I hope they're able to come back. But this is the hardest invite for me to give, and I would actually probably put, if I had to switch this out, it would probably be faceless, but I think just the top 2 is too strong. So there you have it, my top 10 teams that I think are going to be invited to the to the Kiev Major. I personally didn't include results from China Top and WCA, as I felt those weren't valuable enough to kind of make a difference in my standings. And honestly, I think Valve is going to do their own thing and probably make this video irrelevant. So I'm curious to see what the format will actually be, and I'm excited to see who will be invited to the upcoming major. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Conrad. I've been working professionally in esports since 2011. Most remember me as the Cloud9 Dota 2 manager when Eternal Envy was the captain, but I've been doing various things in Dota since 2013 and hope to be making more content this year, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.